What's up, everybody? My name is Paddock, and today I'm going to show you 3 steps to make your improv sound funky. Today I am coming to you from my practice studio in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, and I'm very excited to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that is funk improv. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you the first 3 steps that you want to think about and you want to work on when you start doing funk improv. But if you'd like to dive deeper into this subject, in my sax school, the Paddock Sax School, I have an entire course dedicated to funk improv where we do a very deep dive, and I give you all kinds of tips and techniques to make your funk improv solos sound really good and really interesting. So let's get started. The very first thing that you want to think about when it comes to funk improv is playing straight 8th notes. Now, the term straight 8th notes can be a little confusing because you're not actually going to be playing perfectly even, perfectly straight 8th notes. So if you did that, it would sound like this. And that is not funky at all. So what you're actually going to do is play straight 8th notes, but you're going to use a lot of different variations in your articulation, things like slurs and dots and marcatos and accents and all that kind of stuff to make your 8th notes have a lot more stuff going on with them so they sound a lot more interesting. Take a listen to what I'm talking about. So that's not super funky yet, but that sounds a whole lot better than the regular even straight 8th notes. So when we're talking about straight 8th notes, we're basically saying don't swing your 8th notes like in a jazz style. It's impossible to make that sound funky because that sounds jazzy, and jazzy and funky are not the same thing. So your first step is going to be thinking about playing straight 8th notes. In other words, don't swing your 8th notes, and think about using a lot of articulation. Now that might sound a little confusing, but when we talk about this next step, it's going to become very crystal clear. And the next step is to use syncopation. So when we're talking about syncopation, we're talking about 16th notes and 1 E and A. So that's how you count 16th notes, 1 E and A. So when you bring out the syncopation in the 16th notes, that's when you get really cool funk rhythms. As you can hear, there is a lot of space in between the notes. I call them stabby, jabby notes, meaning you're going to kind of stab these notes instead of putting them together like you would in a jazz line. And because you have so much syncopation and so many stabs and jabs, the rhythms look crazy if they're written out. That's why you don't see a ton of method books for funk improvisation or funk etudes, because the rhythms are just so crazy that it would be really difficult to read the music. So when we talk about syncopation, again, you really want to be thinking about bringing off those offbeats, the E's, the U's, and the An's. So here is a slowed down version of syncopation. So you can hear there's space around a lot of these notes, and they're hitting hard, there's strong articulation, and you're really bringing out the space between the notes. And you're using your accents to give you some really cool rhythms on top of the rhythms. Take a listen to what I'm talking about when I say that. So a pro tip is if you want to make your syncopation sound even better, accent some notes, make some notes stronger so that you have this counter rhythm on top of your syncopated rhythm. If I don't bring out those more accented notes, I'll still play syncopation, but it won't have the same flavor. So if you want to bring your syncopation to the next level, think about accenting some notes and creating a counter rhythm on top of the syncopated line that you are playing. This is what it will sound like if you do it faster. You're really going to hear the counter rhythm on top. If you're enjoying this tutorial and you'd like to go deeper into the world of funk improv, I'd like to invite you to check out the Scott Paddock Sax School. In my sax school, I have an entire course dedicated to funk improv, and in that course, we learn 10 classic funk songs. With each song, I teach you different tips and techniques to make your improv sound a whole lot more interesting and go way beyond just playing blues scale or pentatonic solos. So we talk about theme development, I talk about how to move between chords in a funk style. We just go super deep into the world of funk improv. So if that sounds like something you'd like to check out, I'll put a link in the video description below to the Scott Paddock Sax School. If you're not quite ready for the improv course, I also have pathway courses for beginner saxophone players, early intermediate saxophone players, intermediate, so on and so forth. And in the pathway courses, it is a step-by-step method that I teach you so that you understand exactly what to practice, how to practice, and what to practice next to make it to the next level of playing the saxophone. Now you're playing straight eighth notes and you're thinking about your syncopation, so let's talk about the third step. The third step is all about the way you group the notes together, and I call that combinations. So when I'm talking about combinations, I'm talking about thinking about your notes in groupings as opposed to individual notes. So something like this. Thinking about that as one combination, one note grouping. When you're improvising in a funk style, you want to think about your notes in groupings. It's going to make it a whole lot easier if you think about these combinations or clusters of notes being one thing. Something like that being one phrase, one idea, one combination of notes. Something like that. So you want to think about these notes in combinations and then connect the combinations with lines. So none of those notes are acting alone, even though there's space all around them. They are all acting together in combinations of notes. So once you start thinking about your notes in combinations, it's going to make your phrases sound a whole lot better. So I'm going to play a couple really simple combinations so you can hear a little bit more about what I'm talking about. So I'm using those three notes. It's a G, B flat, and a C. That is my combination. Those are my three notes that I'm using together. And I use that combination and I keep twisting it up. So I'm using those three notes as like my lick idea or combination, and I twist them all up and come up with really cool ideas using those notes. And again, when we're talking about funk improv, we're talking mostly about rhythm, because oftentimes when we're soloing over a funk tune, there aren't a lot of chord changes, so it's all about the rhythm, the style, and the articulation. And those are your first three steps for funk improv. You want to start off by thinking about straight eighth notes, then you want to bring in some syncopation, and then once you've got the syncopation down, you want to think about combinations or how you're grouping the notes together. If you do those three things, your funk improv lines are going to sound really good and really funky. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. If you'd like to dive deeper into my saxophone world, I'd like to invite you to check out the Scott Paddock Sax School.